Greetings, kings and queens. Happy Sunday, everyone. Hi, Monique. I see you are already in the chat. Monique is ready for today's live. Thank you so much for joining today, Monique. And thank you to everyone else who is watching and who will be watching this broadcast at any time in the future. As you know, every last one of the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis live broadcasts are recorded and uploaded. And so you can go and rewatch these broadcasts at your convenience on the Facebook platform. And you can also find them on the YouTube page as well. And of course, let me go ahead and give a little plug for the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis platforms outside of the one that you may be watching on today. You may be watching me either on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter right now. But I would like to let you know that you can also find the Always a Queen platform on TikTok. You can find us on Instagram as well. So wherever your favorite social media location happens to be, Always a Queen is there. So remember to follow us, to like, to subscribe, and of course, please share our content with your friends and with your loved ones and family members so that they can also benefit from what we share here on the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis platform. So let's jump right into today's conversation. So today's broadcast is about psychotropic medication. This is going to be a lot of information. And it may feel a little bit like you are in class and I am here teaching a whole lesson. But it's a little difficult to speak on topics like this one without it coming across a little bit like a classroom style kind of thing, you know. Um, and so I am going to try my best to make this as interactive as I possibly can. I will be interacting with you in the chat section. I will respond to any questions that you may post. And I encourage you to take notes if you would like, because this is information that is, I think, tremendously beneficial. If you have ever been prescribed, I don't know if you heard that, but it is currently storming outside where I am, and some very loud thunder is happening right outside my window. So if you hear any sound effects in the background, that's what's going on. Some rain and some thunder is happening, but we are going to carry on. So I was saying that I think that this is information that is tremendously beneficial for a wide range of audiences. If you have ever been on any type of psychotropic medication, this is a good broadcast for you to sit and really tune into. If you know anyone who has ever been on any type of psychotropic medication, this is information that will be sound effects. I'm wondering if maybe I should close this window. Maybe that will keep some of the noise out. But I'm also really enjoying the breeze that's coming through the window. Let's see if we can carry on nonetheless. So if you are a parent who has ever had a child who has been prescribed or could potentially be prescribed any type of psychotropic medication, and just generally you have interest in this type of thing, and you think that this is something that you could share with friends or even family members, I encourage you to stay with me and to follow along as I go through this presentation today. and also share it. Share this live with anyone who you think might benefit from what I am going to share here today. So let's jump right into it. We're talking about psychotropic medication, okay? So I'm going to start from scratch with you, and we're going to go from the very, very, very basic. And so the very first question that I will ask and answer today is, what are psychotropic medications? Because I am not going to assume that people just know what I mean when I say this. And so let's start by answering that first very important question. What are psychotropic medications? And of course, I'm going to be looking at my notes. I have my notes in front of me so that I cover everything that I want to cover with you today, so I don't forget to say things that I think are really important to say. So if you see me glancing down from time to time, it's because I am just double checking and making sure that I'm getting everything that I want to say covered. Okay. So what are psychotropic medications? Psychotropic medications are medications that are used to treat mental health disorders. That is the very basic definition of what psychotropic medication is. I have often heard that people refer to this as psychiatric medication as well. I do not like to refer to it as psychiatric medication. I prefer to use the term psychotropic medication. The reason why I prefer to use the term psychotropic medication is because when people hear psychiatric, people immediately think that we're talking about psychosis, which I am going to speak on a little later in the broadcast. But not all psychotropic medication is meant to treat psychosis, which I'm going to speak to shortly. And so I prefer to use the term psychotropic medication because psychotropic medication is a broader term that covers all medications that are used to treat mental health disorders, mental health illnesses of a wide variety. So any type of drug or medicine that is used to treat a malfunction of the brain would fall under the category of psychotropic medication. All right. And I know that this is sometimes weird for people to hear because despite the fact that information about mental health and mental health issues and mental health treatment is so common, there are still persons who struggle to understand that in the same way that other organs in your body can malfunction, and that there are medications that can be prescribed to treat various organs in your body, whether it's your heart or your liver or your kidneys or any other organ. In the same way, there are medications that can be prescribed to treat malfunctions of the brain, because that also happens. Your brain is an organ, just like all other organs. And sometimes there are things that can go wrong. Substances are not being produced the way they are supposed to, or too much of a substance is being produced, or the substance is being produced, but it's not strong enough. And there are a variety of things that could be happening in your brain that some type of psychotropic medication could easily assist with and rectify. Okay, and so that essentially is what psychotropic medications are for. They're for treating any illness that can be categorized as a mental health illness or a mental health disorder. Okay. Greetings, Valerie. I'm just pausing to say hello to the people who I am seeing in the chat section. Thank you all very much for joining me for today's broadcast. Hi, Emerald. Hi, Saran. And I see Pastor Drakes. Welcome in. Thank you so much for being here today. I am competing with all the sound effects that you're hearing outside. There is thunder and lightning and some very heavy rain outside my window right now. So if you're just joining me and you're hearing the sound effects in the background, that's what's going on. But we are going to keep going despite all that is going on outside, all right? So let's move forward. So, when we're talking about psychotropic medications, there are a variety of psychotropic medications that you could be prescribed by a doctor. There is no one type of psychotropic medication that is prescribed for all mental health disorders. There are so many that you could possibly be prescribed. And so I want to speak a little bit about the various categories of psychotropic medication that exist. Okay. Greetings, Monique. Thank you for joining. So there are five main types of psychotropic medications. Okay. And notice, I am not saying that there are five types. I'm saying that there are five main types. Why am I saying five main types? Because there are more. But I am not going to cover all the categories of psychotropic medications that exist. We don't have time for that. This broadcast is only supposed to last 1 hour. So we are going to touch the main categories only, the main ones. And there are five main categories of psychotropic medications. Okay? So we're touching the five main ones. Each category that I am going to touch on has its own very specific use. It has its own list of side effects, what that category is typically prescribed for, like what type of patients would we typically prescribe this category for, and all of that. So I'm going to touch on one category at a time and speak to you about the psychotropic drugs that fall into each specific category. And so we're going to cover five of those. All right. Before I start touching on each category, let me just very quickly say exactly how psychotropic medications work, because this is a question that I get quite a lot. And I am going to be answering a lot of frequently asked questions in today's broadcast. Okay, I've actually compiled a list of frequently asked questions regarding psychotropic medication. One of those questions is, how exactly do psychotropic medications work? Like when you take them, what do they do exactly? Like where in the body do they go? How do they work? Like, how do I go from being severely clinically depressed and I take this tablet and all of a sudden I start feeling better? What exactly does the medication do for me? Now, there are some very specific chemicals that are produced in the human brain that are meant to help to stabilize our moods and our behaviors and our decision making and all of those things. All of those things are controlled by the chemicals that are being produced in various areas of our brains. Now, what happens sometimes with these chemicals that are produced in the brain is that the balance is not what it's supposed to be. These chemicals that are being produced by the brain, we call them neurotransmitters. Okay? I know I'm giving a lot of information, but if you need to take notes, just take notes. Okay? And of course, like I said, this is being recorded. So you can go back and watch this. So don't feel afraid if you miss something. So the chemicals that are being produced in the brain are called neurotransmitters. All right? So your brain is producing these neurotransmitters, and these neurotransmitters have specific responsibilities inside the human brain. There are neurotransmitters that are responsible for keeping you calm, helping you sleep. There are neurotransmitters that are responsible for stabilizing your mood, and so on and so forth. Now, there are times when some of the neurotransmitters or chemicals in our brains are not functioning as they should. There are times when you may have an overactive neurotransmitter. And by overactive, I mean your brain is producing way more than you actually need. Your brain is producing too much of it. And that can cause mental health disorders to occur. Sometimes you may have neurotransmitters that are weak, meaning that they are not functioning as they're supposed to because for some reason they're not being produced at the strength or at the potency that is required to properly perform their function. And so that too can sometimes cause mental health disorders to occur. And so, if you are having these imbalances of the chemicals or the neurotransmitters in your brain, you can see how this can lead to mood issues and mood disorders. You can see how it could lead to sleep issues and anxiety issues and a host of other things. Now, psychotropic medications work to adjust the chemicals in your brain. Let me repeat that. Your psychotropic medications, once you take them, they begin to make adjustments to the neurotransmitters in your brain to restore the balance that is required so that you can function optimally. I hope that makes sense to you. And so that is exactly how psychotropic medications work. Okay? All right. Now, let's talk about the categories of psychotropic medications. Remember that I told you we're going to touch on 5 of them. I'm going to tell you what the 5 main categories are that I'm going to touch on today, and then we will go into each category. The first category I am going to touch on is one that I'm sure you are all very familiar with. You hear people talking about this category all the time. We call these antidepressants. Everybody has heard talk about antidepressants. You may even know somebody who is on antidepressants. You may even at some point have been or may be on antidepressants. That is the first and perhaps the most popular category of psychotropic medication. The second category that I'm going to touch on is anti-anxiety medications. Also very common, very popular category. A lot of people take anti-anxiety medications. And so you may be listening to me right now and you may have at some point in the past, or you may now be taking some type of anti-anxiety medication, or you know someone who is. This is very, very common category of psychotropic medication as well. The third category is a category that we refer to as stimulants. Stimulants, also pretty common, but a lot of people just don't know that they are stimulants. And as I go into what exactly the medications are that fall into each category, you will see what I mean. Okay, so that's category number 3, the stimulants. Category number 4 is the category that we call antipsychotics. Antipsychotics are perhaps a little less well known in the general population because the antipsychotics are typically used to treat psychosis, and this is really severe mental illness. I have a lot of sound effects going on in my background today. Can you hear? I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening today. I have a lot of background noise. Please forgive me. So antipsychotics, That's the fourth category that I will touch on today. Like I said, this is perhaps a little less well known in the general population because antipsychotics are often used to treat very severe mental illness, very severe mental health disorders. And so, unless you would have been in contact with someone who has been put on antipsychotic medication at some point, you probably may not know very much about this particular category, but we'll talk a little bit about it today. The final category I'm going to touch on is category 5, and those are mood stabilizers. Mood stabilizers is something that you may have heard of as well, and perhaps may even know somebody who has taken them or may be currently taking them. Okay, so those are the 5 categories I'm going to touch. So let's jump right into it. Category number 1, antidepressants. So just like the name suggests, it's called antidepressants. So just based on the name, you can already guess what that is for. Antidepressants are used to treat depression, right? That's why they're called antidepressants, because we prescribe them to persons who have clinical depression, all right? And there are many, many types of antidepressants, meaning that you can come across various brands, various potencies, meaning you can range from very mild antidepressants to very strong antidepressants. That is determined by the clinician who is prescribing the psychotropic medication for you. It depends greatly on the severity of your condition. And like I said, your clinician will determine how much or how much or how little you may need where it comes to that medication, okay? Just greeting all the persons I see popping into the chat. Greetings, Giselle and Jem. Thank you so much for joining me for this broadcast today. We're talking about psychotropic medication. So right now I am discussing antidepressants, right? I think this is probably the most common category of antidepressants. How exactly do antidepressants work? Now, remember I spoke just now about neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters are the chemicals that are produced by your brain to help you to have optimal mental health. Sometimes those neurotransmitters are not being produced in the amounts that you need. Sometimes they're being overproduced. Sometimes they're not potent enough. And there can be a variety of issues happening with the chemicals that are being produced by your brain. The psychotropic medications help to remedy those imbalances and bring things back to where they are supposed to be. All right. Now, one of those neurotransmitters or chemicals that is being produced by your brain is called serotonin. You may have heard people talking about serotonin before, and you wonder what in the world is serotonin. Serotonin is one of the neurotransmitters. It is probably one of the most powerful neurotransmitters that is produced by the human brain. And serotonin is responsible for regulating your mood. Serotonin is responsible for regulating your sleep. Serotonin does a number of very important things. It helps to regulate a number of very important bodily functions as well. And so whenever your serotonin is not being produced by your brain at the levels that it should be, problems, a lot of problems. You don't want to be producing less serotonin than you actually need. Now, that actually happens quite often. We see a lot of people coming in who have diminished serotonin being produced by their brains. And so that specific neurotransmitter is not being produced at the levels that it should be. Now, what do we do with that? Because this obviously immediately results in its issues like clinical depression. And so we prescribe antidepressants that are referred to as SSRIs. What does that stand for? SSRI stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. We say SSRI for short. It's just a long way to say that the drug is responsible for increasing the amount of serotonin that is being produced by your brain. So your serotonin levels are below where they should be. You're prescribed an SSRI, which falls under the category of antidepressants, and that increases the level of serotonin and it reduces the depressive symptoms that you may be feeling. It restores your ability to sleep because sometimes low levels of serotonin also impact your sleep wake cycle. All right. And so that is one of it. I think it, I would risk it and say that SSRIs are probably the most commonly prescribed antidepressants. I'd even take it further and say they may be the most commonly prescribed psychotropic medication. It is what people are most often receiving prescriptions for. Okay. Now, among the antidepressants, SSRIs are not the only one. There's another group that we call SNRIs. Note the first category was SSRI. This second one is SNRI. Don't get them confused. The SNRI is another drug which gradually increases the amount of norepinephrine in your brain. What's norepinephrine? I know I'm giving you a lot of long words, but this one is another neurotransmitter or chemical that is produced by the brain. And this is the neurotransmitter that helps you to feel awake and alert. It's the neurotransmitter that makes sure that you're not feeling lethargic and lazy and can barely drag yourself through your day. If you're feeling that way, then that is when you may possibly be prescribed an SNRI, which helps to increase the amount of norepinephrine in your brain, and that reduces that feeling that you have of lethargy. Like some people experience severe lethargy, extreme fatigue. They haven't done anything, but they're just extremely fatigued. This is one of the symptoms of clinical depression as well, where people just complain of being fatigued and exhausted all the time, even though they have not done anything. That sometimes is as a result of the underproduction of certain neurotransmitters in your brain. Okay. And then you have another category that I would like to introduce you to, and this is also an antidepressant. It's called bupropion. Bupropion is typically prescribed for people who have depression, but it's not an all year round depression. I am sure at some point you may have heard people speak about seasonal affective disorder, which is a type of depression that only occurs at certain times of the year. It tends to be common in places that have very long, very dark, cold winters, because it is associated with the darkness and the coldness and the shortened days, as well as the lack of sunlight that the human body receives. And so this is why it is referred to as seasonal affective disorder, because it is indeed seasonal. So it is classified as a form of depression, but it only occurs at certain times of the year. And so you would find people coming down with seasonal affective disorder typically around the winter months. We see a lot of cases of seasonal affective disorder between like February, March, those months. That is when you see people really, it starts hitting people. And in those situations, they can be prescribed antidepressants, but they are not prescribed the same antidepressants as persons who are having these symptoms all year long. And so bupropion is an example of one of the antidepressants that would be prescribed for persons who are experiencing clinical depression, but it is seasonal, not a year-long experience for them. Okay, I hope I'm coming through clearly here. There's a lot of information. I know this kind of feels like a class today, but stay with me. All right. I see Monique is asking a question. When neurotransmitters are produced in an amount greater than what is needed, does that cause overthinking? I am going to say no, you know what? That question, let me highlight that question. I am going to say yes and no. And I will tell you why, Monique. I am going to say no because overthinking is not necessarily connected to neurotransmitters at all. Your neurotransmitters could be functioning optimally, meaning that your brain is not producing more or less than you need. They are at optimal levels in your brain, and you could still be overthinking. Overthinking is not necessarily always connected to your neurotransmitters. If you are an overthinker, you're just an overthinker. And so this is not necessarily a situation where I might recommend that you be prescribed some type of psychotropic medication. As a matter of fact, I would never prescribe psychotropic medication for you just because you are overthinking. Overthinking is something that you can work through with me just in talk therapy. Your neurotransmitters do not need to be touched at all. That is something that you can work on without drugs because it's not necessarily connected to your neurotransmitters. However, I am not ruling out the possibility that sometimes there may be people who are overthinking because it is connected to some other mental health disorder. Am I making sense? Meaning that it's not just an overthinking issue. Sometimes overthinking is just that. It's just overthinking. It's not connected to anything larger, really. But there may be times, and I would not rule out the possibility that there are times when people are overthinking because it is connected to something larger. There is a bigger problem at work. And so it's not just overthinking, it's overthinking which is resulting from a bigger issue. And if I do detect that there is something else going on that is bigger than just, oh, this person is just an overthinker, then I might be concerned that the neurotransmitters are being produced in excessive amounts or in amounts that are too small to carry out their function. But I wouldn't immediately assume that just because somebody is overthinking. I sometimes overthink. I think we're all guilty of overthinking sometimes. Granted, I know that there are some people who do it a lot more than others, but it is not necessarily a neurotransmitter issue, right? But like I said, this is a situation that I would probably handle case by case. And if somebody is sitting in front of me and they're dealing with overthinking, but I detect that there is a deeper issue, this isn't just an overthinking situation, this is an overthinking situation that is linked to something else, and I think that there may be a neurotransmitter issue going on, then we will look into that. But it is never an automatic assumption, right? Because people overthink. We all are guilty of that sometimes. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the side effects of antidepressants. Every category of psychotropic medication that I speak to today, I am going to highlight what some of the side effects are because I know that this is one of the concerns that people have. A lot of people have concerns with taking psychotropic medication because of the side effects. It's not because they don't believe that they need it. Sometimes they know they need it. Sometimes they truly believe that they do have an issue and they need this medication, but they are afraid of the side effects. And so they do not want to take the medication because in their mind, they're thinking, will it make a bad situation worse? And so it's really important to sit and speak with your clinician. Hi, Serene. Thank you for being here. I see you. It's really important to speak with your clinician. Having a good clinician whenever you are being put on psychotropic medication, it's so important. It's so important. Having someone who is open to sitting and talking you through the process, giving you all the information that you need, letting you know what all your options are, speaking to you about possible side effects, how long the medication might take to work, how long will you be taking the medication, all the things that may be bothering you. That is so very important. Okay, and so let me just quickly highlight what some of the side effects of antidepressants are that we see in clients from time to time. Drowsiness is a top side effect of antidepressants. A lot of our clients complain about that, and so I have in the past recommended that my clients take their antidepressant medication at night when they're going to sleep because they just cannot seem to get away from the drowsiness. It makes them sleepy. It does not happen to everyone. It does not happen to everyone, but for some people, this is one of the side effects that they have. It makes them drowsy. Believe it or not, there are other people who have the exact opposite side effect. It makes them unable to sleep. Imagine that. Do you see how no two bodies are the same? This is why you cannot go by somebody else's experience. Just because it happened to somebody else doesn't mean it will happen to you. So you cannot always let your health and the decisions that you make for your own health be based on other people's experiences because no two bodies are the same. I have clients who complain about insomnia because of their antidepressants. They literally cannot sleep. They go to bed and they can't sleep. They're not sleepy. While there are others who complain constantly that it's just making them drowsy and sleepy and they just want to sleep all the time. No two bodies are the same. Another side effect that we see sometimes is constipation. And nobody likes to be constipated. But for some reason, the antidepressants seem to cause this side effect in some people. They become extremely constipated. And then we may have to give them another prescription to get rid of the constipation because that is not a good thing. All right. We also sometimes see people who complain about weight gain. It seems to be causing them to pack on pounds. People have complained about libido issues. And when I say libido, I'm talking sexual libido. Males may complain about erectile dysfunction. Females may complain about lack of, desire to engage in sexual intercourse. We've seen clients who have experience tremors, like shaking hands, tremors, because of their antidepressant medication. And another one that we have seen sometimes is dry mouth, where people complain that just the inside of their mouth just feels very dry as a result of the medication that they have been put on. But like I said, no two bodies are the same. No two bodies are the same, and I would not recommend that you refuse to take your medication just because you heard somebody down the road took theirs and this happened to them, because it may not be your experience, right? I see Monique is asking about ADHD, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment because there is a category of psychotropic medication that is specifically prescribed for the treatment of ADHD, but not this category. Antidepressants is not the category that is used to treat ADHD. For those who may have joined in late, I highlighted 5 major categories of psychotropic medication that I am going to speak about today. I just spoke about the first one, which was antidepressants. That was category number 1. We're going to go now to category number 2. Okay, category number 2 is anti-anxiety medications. That's another very common category of psychotropic medication, very commonly prescribed as well. I see a lot of clients who are on this particular category of psychotropic medication as well. They take anti-anxiety medication. And anti-anxiety medication, just as the name suggests, is used to treat an array of anxiety disorders. They can treat panic attacks, phobias, generalized anxiety, basically any condition that would involve anxiety related symptoms. Okay. Now, what exactly do anti anxiety medications do? Anti anxiety medications contain something that is called beta blockers. This is a word that you may have heard somewhere. You may have read it, heard it on TV or something, and you're not sure what beta blockers are. Beta blockers are a substance often found in anti anxiety medications. And what do beta blockers do? Beta blockers help to treat all of those physical symptoms that are often associated with anxiety. What physical symptoms am I talking about? Physical symptoms that are associated with anxiety would include things like your heart racing. Just think about what your body is doing whenever you are experiencing anxiety. And those are the physical symptoms I'm talking about. Heart beating fast. Sometimes people experience even nausea. They feel like they want to throw up, sweating, an inability to breathe properly, trembling. All of those are physical symptoms of anxiety. Beta blockers help to control those. And you find beta blockers in anti anxiety medications. Okay? Now, one of the issues that we often see with anti-anxiety medication in the and this there we have this issue sometimes with antidepressants too, is that a lot of people complain that it makes them sleepy. Drowsiness is one of the side effects that people complain about very often, both for antidepressants and for anti-anxiety medications. And so, like I said before, typically I tell my clients, anybody who says, the medication is making me really sleepy, I tell them just don't take it in the daytime, take it at night. Try to change the time. Some people prefer to take their medication in the morning just because maybe it might be easier for them to remember to take it at that time. But if it is making you sleepy, then that is not ideal, is it? Because you have to get through your day. And so my recommendation usually is just change the time. Change the time that you take it. I would never tell them to stop taking it, because if you need to take your medication, you need to take the medication. But typically, when you switch and take it at bedtime rather than in the morning, you feel different. You get a good night's sleep. And in the morning, you are not tired. All right. And here's the thing. Here's an interesting fun fact for you. Because a lot of these anti-anxiety medications tend to cause people to feel drowsy, sometimes they are prescribed for people who don't sleep well. You see how that works? Killing two birds with one stone, right? Okay. Now, here's the thing about anti-anxiety medications. So, anti-anxiety medications, hi Sylvia. Anti-anxiety medications can cause dependency if they are taken for extended periods of time. And I'm going to touch on this a little later down. I have this on list of things I want to touch on. But just very briefly, I will say that this is something that we keep an eye on where it comes to anti-anxiety medications. These tend to be prescribed for only a short period of time, and it is done intentionally in order to prevent dependency, because people can become dependent on them. Okay. So, what are some of the potential side effects of anti-anxiety medications? Like I said just now, drowsiness is one that people complain about quite often. People complain about nausea, blurry vision, headaches is another one that we get sometimes. And of course, any medication that is making you feel drowsy is also going to cause fatigue. Recently, there has been talk about persons complaining about having nightmares after taking an anti-anxiety medication, but I don't know how common this is, but it has been reported where people seem to think that their anti-anxiety medication is linked to them having bad dreams and nightmares. I I don't think this is very common, but it is a complaint that people have made in the past. So I just wanted to bring that up. Okay. All right. Let's go to the third category. This is the category that Monique is interested in. And I'm referring to Monique George, who is watching on, looks like Monique is watching on YouTube. Monique was asking about ADHD. And so this the third category, which is stimulants, is the category that you are asking about here because this is the category that is used to treat conditions like ADHD. Okay, so we're on to category number 3 now. This category referred to as stimulants. What do stimulants do? Stimulants are to help to manage or calm down disorganized behavior. What do I mean by disorganized behavior? Disorganized behavior might look like persons who are unable to sit still, persons who are unable to concentrate and focus, persons who are erratic, who have erratic constant movements, these types of things. This is what I refer to when I say disorganized behavior. And this category of psychotropic medication, which we call stimulants, is specifically prescribed in situations like these because it helps to manage disorganized behavior. Okay? How exactly how exactly do the stimulants work? The stimulants, once they are administered, they immediately begin to calm down the nervous system and they improve your ability to concentrate. They have a calming effect on the nervous system. And so if you couldn't sit still, it helps you to sit still. It helps you to focus. It increases your attention span. It increases your ability to concentrate on a specific activity before moving to the next activity. This is what the stimulants are for. And so as a result, you typically see these being prescribed to persons who have attention deficit and hyperactivity disorders. Make sense? Because an attention deficit requires something that is going to help you to do what? Concentrate and focus. And any type of hyperactivity disorder also requires something that is going to help to calm the nervous system down, help you to sit still, manage any disorganized movements. And this is precisely what stimulants are for. This category of psychotropic medication, referred to as stimulants, we use these for people who have ADHD all the time, to include children, by the way. And I'm going to touch on that a little later. I don't want to say too much about that. But this is specifically what Monique was asking about. Okay, and so this is the category of psychotropic medication that you would be interested in, Monique. So if you know of somebody who has ADHD and who you think might be able to benefit from, this is something that you want to definitely investigate and look into further. Right? If I had time, I would talk so much more because there's so much more to say about this, but I want to move along because time is passing very quickly. So let's jump to the other category. The other category, which is category 4, is the category that are referred to as antipsychotics. Antipsychotics help to manage psychosis. Okay, now I can already hear you asking, okay, so they help to manage psychosis. So what is psychosis? Psychosis describes any conditions that indicate that the person has lost touch with reality. Any condition in which the person has lost touch with reality is referred to as psychosis. What do I mean by somebody has lost touch with reality? I mean, if this person is experiencing hallucinations, if this person is experiencing delusions. What are hallucinations? Hallucinations means I am seeing and I'm hearing things that are not there. I am seeing somebody or something that nobody else in the room can see. I am hearing voices that nobody else can hear. That's hallucinations. And that's an indication that that person has lost touch with reality. Delusions are another indication that persons have lost touch with reality. Delusions means that I believe things that are clearly irrational. Like I got up this morning and decided that I have superpowers. And I truly believe that I have superpowers. And so I tie a cape around my neck and I climb up onto the roof of my house and I try to jump off. Obviously, I do not have superpowers. And what is going to happen is I'm going to hurt myself. Those are delusions. When you believe things that are clearly untrue, and hallucinations means that you're seeing and hearing things that are not there. This is an indication that somebody has lost touch with reality. And any mental health disorder in which somebody has completely lost touch with reality is what we refer to as psychosis. You would say that that person is in a state of psychosis. And obviously, this is a very severe situation. We're talking about severe mental health disorders at this point, right? If somebody is in a state of psychosis, that's a severe situation. And in psychosis, we would turn to the category of psychotropic medications that are referred to as antipsychotics. Okay? Antipsychotics are used to treat, like I said, delusions, hallucinations, paranoia. This is typical in clients who have been diagnosed with conditions like schizophrenia, for example. Schizophrenia is a condition in which persons typically experience a lot of delusions and a lot of hallucinations, and often these patients are prescribed antipsychotic medication to deal with the psychosis that they experience. And so you would sometimes see a lot of they're very incoherent. They're talking to you, but you don't know what it is that they're trying to communicate to you. They're confused, muddled speech, muddled thinking. Sometimes they may even be violent and disruptive. I have seen this as well, where persons lose touch with reality so much that they become violent toward healthcare providers. They are very disruptive. They can be manic, very loud. You can't settle them down. And these types of situations, in situations like those, this is where we would turn to antipsychotic medication. Okay. Just want to pause a moment and just um, look at this comment. I see a comment here from Jem. Jem says, most people experience sad when daylight savings time ends, hence why some politicians are trying to do away with it. Yeah, I agree with you, Jem. I don't know if the political maneuverings will reduce the number of persons who experience seasonal affective disorder. We can only hope. Um, but it does indeed have to do with the reduced amount of sunlight and daylight time that people have, and it causes seasonal affective disorder to set in, right? Okay, so let's jump back to the antipsychotic medications. Now, another there's another thing that sometimes antipsychotic medication is used to treat, and to I want to speak to it, but I want to speak to it separate and apart from the other things that I just mentioned, schizophrenia and the delusions and hallucinations and stuff. Sometimes antipsychotic medications are used to treat postpartum psychosis. Do you know what postpartum psychosis is? Postpartum psychosis is like an extreme form of postpartum depression. In other words, women can fall into postpartum depression following giving birth and recuperate from it. But there are some cases, not so common, but it happens, where postpartum depression keeps going and then begins to flow over into a more severe condition, which we refer to as postpartum psychosis. And remember what I told you about psychosis earlier. Psychosis means that you have lost touch with reality. So postpartum psychosis is sometimes treated with antipsychotic medication as well. But this is something that we are very careful with because we're dealing with a young mother. And there are a lot of implications when somebody is caring for a newborn. And so these are cases that are handled very carefully. That's why I wanted to kind of take a moment to just speak to this one very specifically, because we don't just prescribe antipsychotics randomly. It has to be that we see no way around it, right? Okay. And when I say we, I'm not necessarily talking about me. I'm talking about clinicians in general who may spot these things and determine that there may be need for medication. What are some of the possible side effects of antipsychotic medication? Dry mouth, dizziness, weight gain, blurred vision. In postpartum psychosis, when it's prescribed, sometimes we see things like fluid retention, headaches, extreme sleepiness, low energy, fatigue, lethargy, no enthusiasm or motivation to get up and do anything. There have been situations in which women have stopped having their menstrual cycle, like it just stops the menstrual cycle for some reason. It doesn't happen in everybody, but I've seen cases of women who have been put on antipsychotic medication and they just lose their menstrual periods and they're not pregnant. And so these are a few of the side effects that one may see. Like I said, no two bodies are the same. No two bodies are the same. So this is important. So please do not just conclude that because it happened to somebody else that it is going to happen to you. I have also seen a lot of people who take their whatever psychotropic medication they have been prescribed and do very well. I see that too all the time. So let's not get carried away. Okay. Serene is making a comment here that I think is super important, and I'm going to highlight it. Serene says, the reason it's so important for OBGYN to perform the Edinburgh screenings as a start to assessing and normalizing postpartum depression. So true, Serene. Thank you very much for highlighting that. And if there is anybody here who does not know what the Edinburgh screenings are, oh, I see Serene has posted it. Thank you so much. The Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale. That just basically means that all new mothers should be screened for depression. It should be a part of the regular protocols for every new mother. No mother is supposed to be sent home with a newborn baby without having been screened. It shouldn't happen because postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis, which I just spoke to, can result from that. And so what Serene is pointing out here is super important. Super important. These screenings, these postnatal screenings, women, queens, make sure you get them. Make sure you get them. If you're not given one, ask for it and ensure that you are assessed before you go home with your baby. Especially if you feel like you're not okay. It's okay to ask for it. Let them know that you're not feeling okay so that you can be assessed and then you can get the help that you need. Okay? All right, now quickly, let's go into the very final category. Last category I'm going to touch on. Remember that I told you that there are many, many categories of psychotropic medications. I am only touching 5 categories today. I don't want anyone to go away saying that I spoke about every psychotropic medication category because I have not. I have touched 5 only 5. Okay? So, the fifth and final category I'm going to touch today is called mood stabilizers. I hear this term being thrown around quite a lot, and most of the time I'm not sure people know what they really are talking about when they say somebody's taking a mood stabilizer. So let's make sure that everybody does know exactly what a mood stabilizer is. So mood stabilizers are used to control extreme emotions. And when I say extreme, I do mean extreme. It means you're either way, way on this end or you're way, way on this end. You're never in the middle. It's always extreme. Okay? And mood stabilizers are to help to bring you off of the extremes and bring you back to the middle so that you can experience balance. Now, I don't want you to think that mood stabilizers stop you from feeling all of the exuberance and the exhilarating emotions that human beings can experience. They don't stop you from doing that. What they do is they help you to be able to go there and then come back to the balance that should be your norm. For some people, coming back to that balance is very difficult. They tend to just kind of exist out here on the extremes. They either high, high or low, low. They can't seem to find a nice balance in the middle. And so mood stabilizers are what help you to regain that balance and to maintain it. It makes that balance sustainable for you if you struggle to maintain that. And that is essentially what mood stabilizers are for. Okay? They help you to just manage that range of emotions that human beings experience. Mood stabilizers are typically used primarily, and when I say primarily, I mean most of the time, when mood stabilizers are being prescribed, they're being prescribed to treat situations where people are experiencing extreme mood swings and really extreme, like situations of bipolar disorder. If you know how bipolar disorder works, as the name suggests, it's bi, meaning two, polar opposites. So you're either way on this end or way on this end. You're never in the middle and have a balance. You only exist on the extremes, which is dangerous. Okay. And so it helps to control those extreme mood swings that people with bipolar disorder, for example, would experience. And it helps to just restore that nice balance and keep them centered and stable. Okay, and so this is essentially what mood stabilizers are for. And this is the final category that I will touch on today. What are some of the side effects of mood stabilizers? These are a few that I have seen reported, and other clinicians as well: upset stomach, drowsiness, weight gain, dizziness, blurry vision has been reported. I don't know how common that one is, but it has been reported. People say that it kind of makes their vision blurry. They feel like they're not seeing clearly sometimes. And it is believed to be associated with taking mood stabilizers, but does not happen to everyone. It has been reported, and so I just feel like it's important to mention it. Okay. All right, those are the 5 categories I want to touch. Now, I want to very quickly just run through a few frequently asked questions, and then we're going to wrap up this afternoon's live. Hi, Charmaine. You're joining in late, but that's okay. You can always go back and watch the recording. All right. So, quickly, I'm going to just hit 4 frequently asked questions that I think are important to touch before I wrap up this broadcast today. Very quick. The first question I get sometimes is, if I go to therapy, are they going to put me on drugs? I feel like I should go to therapy, but I'm afraid to go because I don't want them to put me on drugs. You're not going to automatically be prescribed psychotropic medication just because you go to therapy. As a matter of fact, the majority of people who go to therapy are not prescribed psychotropic medication. It is only prescribed if there is a need. And if you are dealing with a situation that can be dealt with just by talk therapy, then we will just talk. Nobody's going to give you a prescription just because you decided to go to therapy. No, therapy does not automatically equal drugs. Therapy will only equal drugs if, when you go to therapy, it is determined that you are dealing with a situation that is too severe to just do talk therapy alone, because there are some situations that talking alone is just not going to fix. Sometimes you do need to accompany talk therapy with psychotropic medication. But that can only be determined if you actually go into the office and see the clinician. So sitting at home and saying, I'm not going to therapy because I am afraid they might give me drugs, there is no guarantee that you will be prescribed anything. And also, some persons do get a recommendation that, maybe you should take some antidepressants, or maybe you should take anti-anxiety medications, and they choose not to. You can say no. You do have that choice, and so some persons will say, yes, you know what, I would prefer to just do this the talk therapy way. I would rather not take any antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication. I know it probably might be harder for me, but I want to do it this way. And so you do have a choice. Nobody can force you to take the medications. So there's that. I get that question very often. Another question that I get very often is, if I take psychotropic medications, am I going to get addicted? I've heard people say that once you start taking them, you can't stop because you get addicted to it, and then you're going to end up taking it for the rest of your life. That is not true. Truth be told, there are some psychotropic medications that are not addictive at all. Let me just be completely honest. There are some psychotropic medications that are not addictive at all. They will never, ever cause you to become dependent on them. They just don't have that impact on the human body. However, there are some that are very, very addictive. As a matter of fact, there are some where you will not be prescribed more than a certain amount for longer than a certain period of time. And we do that intentionally because we're trying to prevent you becoming dependent on it. We're trying to prevent addiction. Okay? There are 3 specific categories that are known to be dangerous where it comes to dependence. One is anxiety medications. People have been known to become dependent on anxiety medications. The second one is stimulants. The stimulants, like the ones that are used to treat ADHD and such, people have been known to become dependent on those as well. And the third one is sleep medication. Any psychotropic medication that is prescribed to deal with sleep disorders has the potential to become a dependency. And so those are prescribed with a lot of care. They are prescribed in very specific amounts and for very specific periods of time, usually short periods of time. And you are supposed to be doing it alongside talk therapy so that when the time comes for you to be weaned off of that, you would have been doing work with your therapist outside of the medication that's supposed to help you to navigate whatever it is that you're dealing with. The idea is to prevent dependence. Okay, now I'm going to follow this up with another frequently asked question that I get, which is, am I going to have to take this medication for the rest of my life? And the short answer to that question is no, but I have to add a but. People don't like when I say no but I have to do it today. So the answer is no, but there are some mental health disorders in which people do have to take psychotropic medication for long periods of time, or sometimes even for the rest of their lives. There are some conditions that are serious enough that it would require that, like bipolar disorder, for example. That's the example that pops into my head right away. Bipolar disorder medications, people are typically on those for the long term. Like you just make up your mind that you're going to be on it for the long term. And sometimes you may just be taking it for the rest of your life. Like you need your medication, you have to take it every day, right? And bipolar is just one example. There are others. So there are some exceptions, but for the most part, the answer is no, you don't have to be on medication for the rest of your life. If you don't have one of those very specific conditions like bipolar disorder, for example, then you don't need to be concerned that you'll be taking an antidepressant, for example, for the rest of your life. No, definitely not. Okay, another frequently asked question. This is the last one. Um, Somebody wants to put my child on psychotropic medication. And I don't think I should allow my child to take psychotropic medication. Should I allow my child to take psychotropic medication? This is a question that I get very frequently. People are very panicked whenever they are told that their child needs to take some type of psychotropic medication. And I'm going to say there's absolutely no need to panic. Using medication, psychotropic medication with children is actually very common. What I would say, what I would say is make sure that you have a good clinician. I repeat, make sure you have a good clinician. And I say this because you don't want to put your child on medication unnecessarily. If it is not absolutely necessary, don't put your child on medication. If it's necessary, yes, but by all means, but please make sure that you have a clinician who's going to sit down and really talk you through this. You need to know what all your options are. You need to know what all the side effects are going to be. You need to know how long the child is going to have to be on that medication. You need to know how the child is going to be affected by it in terms of their performance, their ability to run around and play, all of the developmental milestones that the child is supposed to meet, all the things. You need to have a good clinician because it's your child, right? But like I said, it's very common for children to be put on psychotropic medication. It's very common. Children are put on psychotropic medications for a variety of things. Um, I know a lot of children who are taking medications for attention deficit disorder, for attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. There are children who are put on psychotropic medications for autism, for OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, even for depression, clinical depression. Children can be diagnosed with clinical depression, and other mental health conditions. And so it's not unheard of for children to be prescribed psychotropic medications. But like I said, when dealing with a child, I always say make sure you have a good clinician. There are cases where children have been prescribed medications that they really did not need to take. There are situations where children have been misdiagnosed, as in they're diagnosed with one thing when they actually have another thing. and they are prescribed medication for the thing that they were diagnosed for, when in reality they don't have that, they have this. Crazy things happen. And so I would encourage you to just be mindful of that and know your clinician. Know who the clinician is that is prescribing drugs to your child and even to you. Adults can be misdiagnosed too. That happens. Oh, yeah. You're diagnosed with, I don't know, bipolar disorder, and you don't have bipolar disorder. You may have something else. These things happen. It happens, right? And so know your clinician. I think that is my parting message for you. Know your clinician well. Have a clinician who you have confidence in, who you are comfortable with, who you trust, whose energy doesn't make you feel uncomfortable or unsafe, right? Okay, so this is where I'm going to leave it for today. Um, Thank you so very much to all the persons who have been on here listening to me live this afternoon. We have been talking about psychotropic medication. We covered a lot of content here today. There is so much more that I could have said, and I'm considering doing a part two of this. I'm considering it. If I do decide to do a part two of this broadcast, I will make sure to let you know so that you can tune in to catch it. All right. But thank you so much for being here today. Please remember that this broadcast is being recorded and that you can go back and watch it again. You can find the broadcasts uploaded to the Always a Queen platform on Facebook. You can find them on the Always a Queen YouTube page as well. And they are available to you. So you can watch them at your convenience. You can download them. You can share them with your friends and your family so that as many people can benefit from this as well. All right. Okay. So, and thank you so much for interacting with me as well. All right. I am going to wrap things up here. Yes, I see all of the greetings coming in. You are most welcome. It is my pleasure. I am here to serve. I am here to serve. So I'm very happy that you found this beneficial. All right. Okay. So I will leave you all with love, light, and abundance. I will be back here next week, Sunday, for another live broadcast. Next week, Sunday, we're going to be talking about mental health in the workplace. Another very interesting topic next week, 5 p.m. So you're welcome to join in. In the meantime, be a beautiful week. Bye, everyone.